Today, I woke up with that Christmas spirit, and I thought to myself, what better way to celebrate than to commit a sort of Christmas song heist? The idea is to take a traditional Christmas song, this one from 1864 by Benjamin Hanby, called Up on the Housetop. We'll look at the structure of that song, then reharmonize the song, and then take the reharmonization and use it to inspire a new song. So let's jump right in and get to step one of this Christmas song heist. We'll start by looking at the harmonic structure of this song. It's made up of only 3 chords: our 1 chord, the C chord, our 4 chord, the F chord, and our 5 chord, the G7 chord. This first 4 bars of chords is repeated with 1, 1, 4, 1, and then back to 5. Then we have this C chord bringing us to the second 8, which starts on our F chord, the 4 chord, something very common in songwriting. And then we have a new sequence of chords that ends with a G7, turning us around back to the C. And even though you might look at this structure and say, well, it's very simple, the important thing about it is it's a very sound structure. It supports the melody well. It makes a lot of logical sense. We've got 2 4-bar patterns in the first 8 that repeat. Then when we go to the 4 chord in bar 9, we have a new set using the same chords with a turnaround in the last bar, leading us back home. So the structure is incredibly sound. Let's take a listen to what this sounds like. As you can see, we'll be listening to this song with the most basic of block chords played in root position so that we can hear how they support the melody and listen to the form of the layout and structure of these chords. Sorry, Benjamin, this will not be the most inspired performance of your wonderful song, but we're here for the heist. Let's take a listen to this. So, as you can hear, this is a very upbeat and joyous song, and it makes perfect logical sense. If this were the first time you'd ever heard it, by the second go-around, you'd be able to sing along, and that's how these songs were designed. I'm certain the first version I ever heard of this song was the Gene Autry version from the 1950s, a really wonderful version of this song that does justice to the song. So if you haven't heard that, go take a listen to it. Okay, now let's take these chords and reharmonize the song, moving to the second step in our heist. I've pasted our song into a new document so we can start our reharmonization. And the first thing I notice is that the tempo is very quick at half note equals 92. So let's change that to quarter note equals 92. And we'll change the meter from cut time to 4/4. By changing this tempo to a slower tempo, that's also going to change the character of our reharmonization. Right now, the original song is this very upbeat and bouncy and joyous sounding song. I think with the reharmonization, we'll go after something more nostalgic. And by having this slower tempo, that will help with that feeling and also allow us to add more chords per measure. Right from the beginning, we have 2 full measures of the same chord, the C major chord, our 1 chord. So I'd like to swap in a common substitution for the 1 chord on this second chord, and that's the A minor 7 chord, our 6th minor chord, which is another chord from the tonic region of our C major scale. And as you can see, all of the notes in the melody work perfectly with this chord because they're all chord tones in the A minor 7 chord. And we'll change the first chord from a C major triad to the C major 7. I'm not going to list tensions beyond the 7th unless they're important to the flavor of the chord. So we'll simply call this a C major 7. In bar 3, we move to an F major chord, our 4 chord. So I'd like to target that with a secondary dominant and its related 2. So in this case, that would be G minor 7 to C7. And those two chords function as the 2 minor 7 of 4 and the 5 7 of 4. Checking our melody note, we can see it works with both of these chords. It's the root of the G minor 7 chord and the fifth of the C7 chord. So that melody note's going to work just fine. Let's target a minor chord with a secondary dominant. We'll target this A minor 7. So its secondary dominant would be an E7 with a flat 9. So why a flat 9? Well, when you're targeting a minor chord, you're using its harmonic minor scale to build your dominant chord. If we were to start on the 5th degree of A harmonic minor and build the scale, it would sound like this, which is a Mixolydian flat 9, flat 13 scale. And those are the notes that this chord uses. Now, looking at those notes, I don't see this note, the G, our melody note in that scale. So can we use it as an available tension on our E7 flat 9? The great thing about dominant chords is that you can do a lot of tweaking to the tensions. The only tensions that I wouldn't use on this chord would be the natural 7 and the 4. Any other note from the chromatic scale will work just fine as a tension. So I'm going to call this an E7 sharp 9 since that G is our sharp 9, and I think it'll work just fine here. Let's take a listen to what these changes sound like. I've added in the voicings of the piano chords we reharmonized as block chords in root position. For our E7 chord, I called it an E7 sharp 9 sharp 5, and it sounds like this. It's a very beautiful sounding chord. Now, you may see this written as E7 alt, meaning E7 altered, but I wanted something very specific here. So I called this an E7 sharp 9 sharp 5. On the F major 7, even though I have a 9, I haven't called that out in the chords. All right, let's take a listen to this. The new reharmonization is working really well. That, along with the slower tempos giving us that nostalgic feeling we're after, it's starting to feel like a jazz standard. Moving on to the next 4 bars, which you'll remember had the same chords as our first 4 bars, we can see that we approach this very important moment in our structure with the 5-7 chord. So I'm going to label this return to our C major chord as a C major 7 chord. And I'm going to take this G7 and move it to the 3rd beat of the bar, because I want to add its related to in the first half of the bar. And that would be a D minor 7. So this is the primary 2-5 in the key of C, leading us back to C major. Now, the reason that this G7 is such a strong resolution to our C chord is because it contains a tritone, this B and F. And these two notes want to resolve inward, the B to the C and the F to the E. There's a lot of gravity there. Now, if we take this same tritone from our G chord, the B and F, and we take this F and move it down an octave, and build a new chord containing this tritone, we can get this. A D flat 7. And that tritone now wants to resolve just like it did with the G7. The F wants to move to an E, and the B wants to move to a C, just outward this time. So that's a very strong resolution. And another added benefit we have is that in the melody is a G natural. So when you add this tritone substitution of a D flat 7, you often will label this D flat 7 sharp 11 because it uses the Lydian dominant scale. And that G note in our melody is the sharp 11. So this should work beautifully. All right, since these are the same chords in the second half as they were in the first half, let's just start by repeating those chords. So here we would have our E7, sharp 9, sharp 5, then A minor 7, then G minor 7 to C7, then F major 7. I just realized at the end of bar 3 on that C chord that I should change that to a 2-5. So I can put an E minor to A7 flat 9. And I'll do that here too. I'll make sure to change that in bar 3. And that will lead to a 2-5 going back to 1. So D minor 7 to G7 to C. All right, I'm going to go ahead and put in those few chords in measure 3, and then I'll add the voicings into the piano, block chords just in root position of our reharmonization, and then we'll come back and take a listen to it. All right, I'm back with the reharmonization of the first 8 bars. Here in bar 3, I did add those 2 chords we talked about. They originally came from this spot right here. I've made a little bit of a change to the ending just to add some variety. In the original piece, there's a C major chord here. And since we're going to our 2 chord, the D minor, it was a good opportunity to add something called a passing diminished chord. So when you move from the 1 major chord to the 2 minor chord, a passing diminished chord sits right between those. So we go from C major, up a half step to C sharp diminished 7, up a half step to D minor 7. This is a very common spot to use a passing diminished chord. It's got a strong and very smooth resolution, so make sure to listen for that. On the G7, I changed it to a G7 sus4, again just to add some variety. It softens it a little bit. Now on this C chord, I didn't make it a C major 7 because we have a C in the melody. And that major 7 is a B natural, which could cause either a flat 9 or a minor 2nd with our melody note. And that's undesirable, especially for singers trying to find their pitch. So a good solution is to make this either a C6 chord, a C6-9 chord, or a C add 9 chord, as I have here. And then finally, I've added this C7 chord, which is a secondary dominant, the 5 of 4, leading to the 4 chord to start our second 8. All right, let's take a listen to all of this. Okay, I think we are on our way. This is sounding great. I really like that D flat 7 sharp 11, the tritone substitution we put on the word claus of Santa Claus. It really works well. Now let's move on to the second half. Listening to this, I have an idea that I think might be fun for the second half. So let's jump right into this. My idea is that we've come to probably the happiest part of the song. We've got ho, ho, ho in the lyrics. We've got a major chord here, and it sounds like this. Ho, 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 who wouldn't go? But what if we change this from F major to F minor? We'd have to change the melody note, but that F minor chord is thought to be a very nostalgic chord, so it would sound like this. Ho, 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 who wouldn't go? Yeah, I think this is an interesting idea. Let's give it a try. So we'll change this to F minor 7. And we're going to this C chord, which I actually like here. So is there another way we can get to this C chord? So far we've used our dominant chord, the 5 chord, our primary 2-5, the 2-5, D minor to G7. We've used the sub 5, the tritone substitution. We've even used a passing diminished chord. But there's another technique we can use here, and it's something called a backdoor dominant. That would make this chord, a B flat 7. That comes from the parallel minor. And the reason that this B flat 7 works going to the C is that its tritone is D and A flat. And you could resolve it like this. You know, it's not as strong as the tritone of F and B in the G7 chord or in our tritone substitution, the D flat 7, but it still does have pull to the C. And our ears have become accustomed to hearing this as a path of resolution. It's used in jazz all the time. Okay, let's finish this off using the techniques that we've already used. I'll change this to C major 7. I'll put a 2-5 here, and let's put a sub 5 here. So we're going to make this D minor 7, and then we'll use that tritone substitution here. So we'll make this a D flat 7 sharp 11. And to get to the D minor chord, let's use another passing diminished chord, and that could go here. And I'm going to put, I think, a 2-5 to target this F. So we could have G minor to C7 here. Let's do that. The 2 of 4 moving to the C7, our 5 of 4. Then here for this full bar of C, let's break it up again like we did before and just go to A minor here. We'll substitute the A minor chord for the C chord, another tonic chord. Then to get to this G7 here, let's try, let's move this G7 here like we did before earlier, and then get a new path going there. So I think we'll come at it with a sub 5. So let's go ahead and use one of our tritone substitutions, and that would be A flat 7 sharp 11. Then an interesting way to get to that would be to substitute our C chord, our 1 chord this time, for another chord that's somewhat in the tonic region. That's a whole discussion, but we'll call that E minor 7 chord a substitute for our 1 chord here, and then we'll use an A7, have a little string of dominance here. So we're going from A7 to A flat 7 to G7 to C. I think that should work really nicely. So we have this kind of 2-5 set up. This becomes a sub 5 of the A flat. This A flat is a sub 5 of the G, and then this G resolves to C. So that's pretty interesting, I think. And then to get to this E minor chord, since we have 2 chords for each measure, why don't we do this? We're talking about the F minor chord being a nostalgic sound. And one way that this F major chord will sometimes go to the 1 chord is to play F major to F minor, and then finally to C. And since that E minor is a substitute for our 1 chord, let's try that. Let's go from F major, let's change this to F minor. And of course, we'll have to change this melody note to an A flat. Oh, and we'll have to do it here too. I hadn't done that yet. It is very important that the chords we're choosing are supporting our melody. And we've changed to a minor sound here, so I need to change that melody note to reflect that. Okay, I think we've got a really nice set of chords here. We used a lot of techniques to reharmonize this. I'm going to go ahead and put the piano part in. We'll come back and listen to this, and then we'll move to step 3 of our heist. Working on this reharmonization of Up on the Housetop has really got me in the Christmas spirit, and I hope if Benjamin Hanby could hear what we've done with this song, he would approve. A couple things to listen for in this second 8 that we've done. First, this backdoor 2-5. And then one thing I really love is this move from F major to F minor to E minor 7. Really listen to that. I think that does have that nostalgic feel. Then this string of our dominant chords really worked well. I did add in the flat 9 onto this A7 chord, as I did on this C7 chord, which is now going to an F minor chord. We've changed that here. Okay. Let's take a listen to this. I can imagine this piece being played on a cold winter night. You've got your mug of hot chocolate and the jazz pianist is reading this as a lead sheet, bringing all those beautiful voicings and musicality to this. It would be amazing. So now we're going to take these chords. I'm going to write a new melody. And if you'd like to try that, take this chord progression and now write your own melody to it. I'll do that. We'll come back and listen to that, and that will complete our heist of Up on the Housetop. I've written a new melody over the chords of our reharmonization of Up on the Housetop. I'm really happy with how this song is coming out. I'm going to write lyrics and a bridge and an intro, and I'll have a new Christmas song, all inspired by Up on the Housetop. And that's really what this is, an inspiration. I know we're joking around that it's a heist, but I hope you'll be inspired in the same way to write your own Christmas song. I've made a few small changes to the chords. Here, this was an E7 sharp 9 sharp 5. I've changed that to an E7 flat 9 back to the original chord, and I've made a couple other small changes. Now let's listen to this new Christmas song, and I hope you all have a great holiday season. I'll see you all next time.